Hi, everyone, and welcome to the PowerGrid General Training Session. This is Olivia. I'm the Product Adoption Manager at CRM Fusion, and I will be giving the training today. Everybody is in listen-only mode at the moment, so basically that means you're muted. But I do want you guys to ask questions if you have them. So to facilitate that, we're going to use the questions area in the GoToWebinar control panel. So if you look over, I'm not sure if you're connected on the web or if you have the desktop application, but you should see a portion that says questions. If for some reason you don't see that, feel free to put it in the chat and I'll try to and that too. Third spot would be in questions. When a question comes in, I will read it out loud and I will provide the answer back so we can all benefit. I still see some people logging in here, so I'm just going to give it a minute or two before we start. Before we get started, though, if anybody has any questions, now would be a good time to ask them. Okay, good. It looks like everybody's logged in. All right, so once again, it's PowerGrid today. So it's a quick 1-hour class going over the basic functions of PowerGrid. And PowerGrid is one of my favorites just because I think it's a fun tool to exist in. Before we jump into the module, let's just take a look at what we're seeing here on my screen. I am logged into DemandTools right now, so this is the Today page. It's the page you're going to see after you first log into the tool. And you have some tiles here, self-help, that'll take you to the help documentation and also allow you to search our knowledge base. And live training, either you've seen that or somebody signed you up for today, but that will give you a schedule of all the classes we have available. And then tech support. If you qualify for technical support, you can click that box and log a case. If anybody wants a recording of the training today, you can also request it through that tech support box, even if you don't qualify for technical support. Anytime you want to record a training session, we are more than happy to give it to you, so don't be afraid to request those. And then at the bottom we have, some social media stuff, our latest tweets and what people are tweeting to us, and then how to stay in touch with us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and our YouTube channel, where you'll find some brief tutorial videos. So nothing quite as in-depth as the training. All right, and if you are seeing an upgrade banner at the top of your tool, remind yourself that upgrades are always free, and it's always a really good idea to be on the most current version. So if that's why you've been waiting because you're afraid maybe you'd get charged, you don't have to worry about that. Anytime we release anything new, it's free, so that makes it simple to remember. All right, PowerGrid is listed here on the left, and if you want to get to the PowerGrid specific help doc, click that white and green question mark there. And that launches you out into the help docs directly to that module-specific help page. And of course, you're still within the help, so you can see the breadcrumbs here and navigate around as necessary. So what is PowerGrid used for? PowerGrid is used for manipulation of your data. It allows you to pull down records into an Excel-like environment or spreadsheet-like environment where you see your data in a grid. You've got columns and rows, and you can do some blanket changes, right, where you change every record that you see in this grid. Or you can do what we call cherry picking changes. Maybe one record you need to update the account name, or another record you need to change the owner or the phone number. It doesn't have to be a consistent change across every record. So it facilitates you, making changes like this without the need of exporting a spreadsheet and then working with it in Excel or CSV or whatever you choose, and then re-updating it back into Salesforce. Because when we do that, we're all careful with that, I'm sure, but there is the likelihood of something being corrupted with the spreadsheet or something being changed that maybe we don't see. In PowerGrid, we're not exporting or importing data. We're working with it right here, and all the changes go directly to the Salesforce data center. We're going to run through an example, and I'm going to talk through all the different options that we have listed here on the left. And there's also going to be a lot of right-clicking. So many of the options that you're going to want to use will be found upon a right-click. And just keep in mind that The options will change whether you're right-clicking on a row or a column or an individual cell. Okay, let's go ahead and start, and we do that by clicking Get Data. The little pop-up interface shows up, and it wants to know, all right, what object do you want to get data from? Let's work with, I like leads just because it allows me to show you guys a lot of the different functionality without switching objects. And then once you choose your object, you click Use Object, and you'll notice you have access to all standard and custom objects. Okay, I think we're all familiar with that _C indicating that that is a custom object, and we see the same sort of denotation on a field. So it knows we want to pull down lead records, and it's saying, great, well, which records? Now, PowerGrid is meant to work with, around 20,000 records. I don't want to say that's a hard and fast limit because it's not, but when you think about working in PowerGrid, you have to sort of ask yourself, how many records can I sit down and get through in one sitting? Pretending that you're in a spreadsheet, right, before you have to take a break or you get eye strain or whatever it is. So we try to keep it around 20,000. Now, it is capable of pulling down more, but of course, performance will be a little bit less with the more and more records you have. If you're thinking to yourself, well, I want to standardize, this one particular field on all my lead records, you may want to consider using mass impact. I bring that up not to confuse you guys, but just to let you know that there are some similarities between the tools, and just the amount of data and what you're trying to do may dictate which module becomes more efficient. Now, of course, your ease of use is also important. So if you feel more comfortable in PowerGrid, then we can work things out there. But since you have access to mass impact, I would suggest learning that if you haven't already. Okay, so let's focus back here. We choose our lead object. Now it wants to know specifically which records. And you do have to give it a condition. If you're thinking to yourself, well, I have, my entire lead database is less than 20,000. So yeah, I want to pull them all down. A generic statement that you can use in any object when you want to include all records if you don't see a Use All radio button is that the ID is not equal to, which exclamation point equal sign represents not equal to, and then you leave the value blank and add the condition. Because every record, Salesforce is going to give an ID to. So that's like saying Use All. For this example, though, we're not going to do that. So to get rid of a condition, click the box to the left with that little arrow, and then delete on your keyboard. For this, let's just look at some records in a set of states. So we'll say state, and you can tell that the operators are going to change based on the field that you're using. The conditioning here works identical to what you're going to see in the rest of the modules. So if you're not 100% fluent with the operators, that's fine. We have documentation on it. I'm not going to belabor those right now just because we have so many options to go through on the main grid. So we're going to say equals, we'll do OH, a comma for or, no space after your comma, and then we can do some different states here. And then add the condition. Okay, and like any conditioning set we have, you can have multiple conditions. Maybe if I wanted to get a bit more granular, we could take it down to the city level also and say that, okay, the states can be this, and the city has to be one of these options. When you have two conditions like this, the default behavior is that they are ANDed to each other. So both conditions have to evaluate out true for a record to be brought back. If you would like to OR your conditions, you can do that by checking expert mode. And when that is checked, you get the OR group options to the right. When conditions have the same OR group number, they're still ANDed to each other. Okay? It's when they have different OR group numbers where they become ORed. So I can click in one of the OR groups and either type a 2 or use the directional arrows. Okay, so now it's ORed. We're going to pull lead records where the city is one of these 3 or where the state is one of those 4. And if you want to take everything back to being ANDed, just uncheck expert mode. And we're just going to look at the states right now, so I'm going to take that off. The next thing it wants you to do is to select the field that you want to see on the grid. I see that question. I'm going to answer it in just a second. So I'm going to pull in, just some standard stuff: city, company, first name, last name, email, probably the phone number, But you can bring in anything, record type, you know, whatever makes sense. Any field that you want to view or any field that you potentially need to change on the lead object should be brought into the grid. If you forget to bring a certain field in, there's no problem. We can always come back and grab more. Title. Oh, and we'll do lead source. Okay. And you know what? Let me bring an owner too. So I'm going to bring in the owner ID, but I'm also going to click the table expansion, and I'm going to bring in the name of the owner because I don't even know my own owner ID, but I know my name. So I want to see how they correlate. You can rearrange the order of the fields in the grid. I find it to be far more cumbersome in the grid than doing it here because here you have a nice drag and drop interface. So if you can remember to do the rearrangement here, I think it's just easier. You know, it's just a little bit of a cleaner approach. And you know, let's bring in country too. Okay. Once you've completed those 3 steps, so choosing the object, selecting which records to work with specifically, and then selecting the fields, just click Download Records. When it's sitting here at 0 out of 100, we're just waiting for Salesforce to pick up the job and start processing. So the question that came in is, can wildcards be used when defining conditions? No, not right now. But good question. I hate when I have to say no to stuff like that. It makes me feel like I'm like wrecking your day. But we get asked that enough, and you know, I'm gonna, me too, but thanks, yeah. That was the response I got. But I'm gonna check and see if we have that as a feature request. I'm not sure, well, let me put it this way. If we don't have it, and it is something that has been asked a long time, my guess, and I haven't confirmed this, but my guess is that it just programmatically, it's not part of what we can do on our development side. So I will be sure to double check though. Okay, and here we have it. Down on the lower left, you've got 2,482 rows, which correlates to 2,482 records. And all the fields that we asked for are brought here, and we can rest easy that all the records that are brought in were fulfilling, you know, the state condition that we had for our query. You're going to see this link here for the ID. I didn't ask for the ID to be brought in, but I don't have to. We know how important the ID is, so we always give it to you. And this ID has been hyperlinked. So if I click on it, it's going to log me out to, or launch me out to this Salesforce org and bring me up my record. If yours does not do that automatically, go to Edit and then Options and have the Use Salesforce to View Objects checkbox selected. So on the left here, before we start talking about changing stuff, let's say you forgot to bring in a field. You can click Get More Fields, and really that's all it does. It allows you to bring in more fields from the record that we're currently looking at. So we can bring in record type, and when I click Download Additional Fields, they'll be added over here to the right. So I'm not actually seeing them until I scroll over. Let's say I wanted to include more records. I wanted to get actually more data. There is a Get More Data button. And while it does not allow you to modify the current condition for which data was pulled down with, it will allow you to add to it. So I could say, you know, that the city equals Cleveland, even, you know, and this is regardless of the state. So it's not considering that first condition. It's just saying, all right, in addition to, also add this. And then we'll download the records, and it added 222. I like to save my scenarios when I've, you know, when I realize, okay, this is a good one. I really don't want to do any more changes to how the data is pulled or what data is shown. And I do that just, you know, for ease of use in case I walk away and my, you know, thing times out or my computer crashes, then I just don't have to rebuild it. I save mine under the DemandTools data folder in my documents, and I added a PG folder. So you won't have a PowerGrid folder, but you can add one there. and that's just where I house all of my PowerGrid scenarios. You don't have to put it there, but for me, just keeping it under that one umbrella of the DemandTools data folder, I know where all my scenarios are going to be. And you can see I do a lot with the leads here. So we'll do leads. I'm horrible at typing sometimes. All right. So if you had a pre-built scenario and you wanted to load it, oh, hang on, we got a question here. Are incremental condition additions added to the scenario set and included when selecting Save Scenario? Good question, and that's where I was going with this. So yes, this is added to, so you can see that our number went up. So we added 222 records with that extra condition. And there's some nuances when you save this scenario. So let me show you this. I'm going to clear it out. I'm going to click Load Scenario, and we're going to load that one up, wherever I may have put it. There it is. So you look at the conditions here. We don't see city equals Cleveland. Okay. So any get more data conditions that you put on here are not innately saved with this scenario. I would have to load it back up and add that in myself. But the fields that I selected, in addition to what I had selected initially, are saved. Okay, and the reason for that is because we're adding a condition, but it doesn't, when it puts it here, it can't automatically check the expert mode, and you know what I mean? It doesn't know that it's, whether it's ORed or ANDed, so it can't put that in there for you. But you could, when next time you load it, add in that condition and then resave it. Okay, and this would be an ORed condition here. So if I download now, still same number of records, I can resave my scenario, and then that step will be saved now. So you're having premonitions, you must have known something was a little amiss with that. But just a little nuance you'll have to get used to. Okay, now let's start looking at some of the right-clicking stuff, and I want to start talking to you about, how the certain fields look, because some of them are shown in italics and some of them look normal. Anytime you see a field in italics, and let's look at these over here, that is an indication that this field has come from a related table, so not a field directly from the lead table, which makes them uneditable. Okay, I know I said you can change the owner on records, and you can. You just can't do it with the owner name field. You have to do it with the ID field. That does not mean that you have to know everybody's ID to type it in. If I were to double click in the owner ID field, then yeah, I could type in another ID or paste one in, but that's a little bit tedious. If I right click on it and choose edit, I get a list of my users that I can change to. Okay, so far easier than having to know everybody's ID. Okay, now I clicked update value, and it's still showing my owner name, even though that's not my owner ID, and that's because the change hasn't actually been pushed into Salesforce just yet. Okay, this is a change ready to go, but for changes to be translated into the Salesforce UI, you have to either click Post Data or Post Data and Exit. All right. Good question. So the question is, does that right click to find the pick list apply to any pick list field or just system pick list field? And frankly, I'm impressed that I figured out your acronyms here. They were pretty good. And it applies to any pick list field. Where I think people wouldn't expect it to apply are the system fields like this. So again, it'll show up here for record type. And if I had a multi-select or a single select like lead source and I do edit, you'll see those selectable values. But again, if I double click, I can just freeform type, and it depends on what you want to do. This guy's stealing my thunder with all of his good questions. Just kidding. I like questions. It lets me know you guys are here with me, which is good. Okay, so talking about posting data and getting that change to go into Salesforce, you don't have to do it now. You could work through your entire sheet and then do one post of everything, which is typically what people do. but sometimes you want to test it and see what's going on. So you can, let's say you have a whole bunch of changes here and you don't want to push them all through, but you just want to do this one. You can right-click on a row and update that row. Or if you have multiple rows, update all of them. So let's make sure that that's the record we have pulled up, lead handler. Okay. Yep, that's right. And we're going to see the owner change from me to Lori. So I will update the rows. It lets me know this is happening immediately. Zero errors, and I get a restore file. So when you push changes through here, we'll give you a restore file. If there's a change that you make where a restore file will not be generated, we let you know. Okay, because it is possible to merge in here and convert leads, and those don't give restore files. Any updates, though, will. And of course, if you had any errors, they would be listed in your log file as usual. And so you can see now that the owner ID has been updated to say Lori, and her name is appearing here too. Okay, so it's refreshed the grid to show the actual data as it exists in Salesforce now. And if I refresh the record in Salesforce, we see that the owner changed to Lori. And if we have our history turned on for that field, you can see that I made that change from me to her. So the next question, can you manually type a value not on the pick list? Yes, you can. So pick lists in Salesforce are sort of weird. When you push things into them through the API, it doesn't validate if it's part of the actual pick list, selectable values. So you can, which is a good thing, but also something you need to be aware of in case you don't want to do that. So on the lead source, I could double click here and be like, Olivia rules. That was the lead source. And if I update, let's open that one up. So zero errors, right? Let's look at the lead source. Where are we? Email test. Now let's refresh. And you can see when I open this in Salesforce, it looks like it added to the selectable values, but it didn't. It's just showing there because that's how Salesforce does it. Okay, so fields in italics are not editable, like we see here, because if we try to change the name here, you got to think about it. This is a field coming from a joined table. If we changed Lori Hanlon to Olivia, it would say that this ID now belongs to somebody named Olivia. And that's not what we want to do. We want to change the owner associated to the lead, and we have to do it through the owner ID field. I don't like that. There we go. Okay, so there are other options you have as well. You can clear, so that just removes the value. And if you hover over something that has been changed, you'll see the original value. You can right-click and revert to original. So that's not a true undo, because let's say you've made 3 changes. It's not going to take it back to the most recent change before this. It's going to take it back to the original value of how it started. Okay, so kind of like an undo, but only back to the original. You're going to see copy, cut, and paste, and the keyboard shortcuts of Control-C, X, and V will work. We're going to talk about these guys in a minute. All right, and then, sorry, where's my field? If you decided, okay, this one I'm going to change the lead source, this one I'm going to change this, instead of incorporated, I'm going to change it to Inc. You can do stuff like that. There's also the ability, if you right-click on a column, to find and replace in a column or in the grid. So you can choose, do I want to find in just this column, or do I want to find in the entire grid? And let's do this in the title. Okay, so if I see something like Prez, maybe I want to change it to President. Or if I see Chief Executive Officer, maybe I want to change it to CEO. So you can do things like that. You don't have to go through and do it on every record. So we'll find pres and replace with president. So there it is, and I can do the replace, and there's no more occurrences. But here, if I see, I took out that period, and now it's finding pres embedded in a word. All right, so wherever that exists, it's going to find it. Okay, but that's a nice way of standardizing titles. You know, and you can actually need to look at the data while you're doing it, so you can see if it lets the change. Okay, so I like that find and replace. We also have the find in the single table YouTube grid now too. Not the replace piece, but the find. How did I access find replace? I right-clicked on a column. Okay, and so if you see delete column, that means we're just removing it from the grid, obviously not deleting that field in Salesforce. The move column, remember how I said the reordering was a little bit tedious in here? This column is in the fifth position. Okay, so there's 4 other fields over here: ID, company, first name, last name. And it's like, all right, where do you want to move it now? And I have to count to figure out where I want it to go, which is fine, but to me, it's more work than my brain wants to do. So that's why I like to drag and drop. When you right-click on a row, the show in record, or show record in Salesforce, is just like clicking the ID. The delete record now actually does delete the record from Salesforce, okay? Remove from view set, remove it from the grid. So it doesn't do anything to it in Salesforce, it's just getting it out of your way here. The mark for deletion puts a red X next to it. So when you click post data or post data and exit, that record will be deleted at that time. And then, of course, you can unmark for deletion. For leads and contacts, you will see the option to add to a campaign. Okay, obviously we won't see that for accounts because you can't add accounts to campaigns. And it'll show you your active campaigns, and you can choose a status. And this is something that happens immediately, and there's no restore for this. So if you add somebody to a campaign, they just get added there. I'm not sure which one I did. Was it this guy? Open you up. And we'll add him to the campaign. Okay, see how the error message is different? Zero errors, no restore link though. So if I go into this guy's record, his campaign history was nothing, well, her. If I refresh, there it is. Okay, so the other question, can you manually key a value into a formula field? Well, the interface will let you, but when you go to process, Salesforce is going to say you can't do that. So let's take that question a little bit further. DemandTools will never circumvent or bypass your settings in Salesforce. When you log in, reread everything from your profile to know what your access is to certain data. So that also goes to the system level. So any validation rules or field requirements, all that stuff still applies. You have to just think to yourself, okay, I'm working in Salesforce, I'm just looking at it through different eyes. Let's see, if a manual field change is made followed by manual update, if the field change would have been conditioned out from the initial load set, does the record disappear from the grid after the manual update? That is an interesting question. So I think what you're saying is, if I were to change this to a state like, oh, I don't know, we'll do Florida. If I change that and did, let's do post data. So the post data is going to update my records. So it's still there. So it's not going to take it out. Okay, it's not reading like, does your change invalidate your query? All right. Okay, so I think I'm driving the point home here that right-clicking is important, and you're just going to find some helpful things there. The convert lead, obviously, you're only going to see these two options here: convert leads, convert to existing, if you're working with a lead. And the convert works just like if you were clicking the convert button in Salesforce. So it wants you to select an owner or just use the lead owner, because it's going to convert it into a brand new account and contact. You have the option to create an opportunity. You can give it a lead status. We've added one in our Salesforce org that says converted demand tools. We did that so we know that when a record is converted, if it was converted just because of the tool, because we saw maybe duplication or something, we can denote that and then keep it out of our pipeline reporting and you know, not misconstrue it as a sales activity. Okay, and sometimes people add stuff like dupe, things of that nature. And you can have an email notification sent to the new contact owner to let them know, hey, I made this lead a contact and an account now. And you can also create a task if you'd like. Okay, so this will convert the record into a brand new account and contact. If we chose the convert to existing account and contact, this does a little bit of deduping, like the lead to contact, lead to account dedupers. So it's going to take a look and give you some suggestions for records. If you don't like any of the records that were brought up here, you can do your own search for contacts and accounts. All right, but let's say I like this record. This lead will be converted into this contact and account. And remember that when we do that, the contact fields are considered master, and the lead fields will be pulled over to any field that is blank on the contact, based on your field mapping in Salesforce for conversion. All right, so we've covered these and we covered the row right clicks. Let's do a little investigating on what's over here. Limit records. Let's say you only want to see a subset of the data. You can create conditions based on the fields that you're showing. So we'll do let's see, company name starts with 3/max, and then click limit records. And now it's showing me all those records. And down here in the red, I can see there's 32 of my data set that fit that condition. I can add a condition on that, or maybe I say, let's see, do we have any difference in, okay, we'll do lead source. Lead source equals partner. And so you see here, it brings up the pick list values for you. If you don't see the pick list value, let's say the value here is not something that is actually selectable. You can right-click and add the value to the list so you can find that, okay? So because I added that crazy value, if I needed to find it again, adding it to my list doesn't add it into Salesforce, doesn't do anything there. It's just saying for purposes of working in a grid, we're going to add this so we can find it. Okay. We're just going to do partner here, and then we'll do limit records. So now there's two conditions, and if I hover over that red ink that shows the two conditions, I can see them, but I can't modify them. Okay, so I can keep adding conditions on them, but I can't go back to a condition and say, oh, let me change this. I have to show all records at that point and then recreate my limiting conditions. Okay, but maybe you're looking at these three and you're like, great, these all need to change from Kelly to Ashley. And I can copy, highlight, and paste. And there we go. Okay, and then I can do show all records. And this system's smart enough to know, obviously, not to include the records that were in between those few that we had queried down to. So it's not like it's going to take everything between, you know, record 10 and 300 and make that same change. It just does the ones that were visible to you at the point in time where you did the change. I like this button here because if you ever are like, well, where did I make those changes? Show change rows will filter down for you and show you every record that has a change ready to be made. Okay, that's kind of like, I love that button, and I think a lot of people just either glaze over it or don't realize that it's helpful. Okay, so the limiting records is just a way for you to get the view and access to a subset of data that you need to work with. The sort order is, you know, which order do you want these records to be sorted in the grid? And you have 3 levels of a sort. The arrows here are functional, and they denote ascending and descending. So we can do by company name, and then we'll do by the last name within the company, and we'll sort. Okay, obviously things with punctuations show up first, and then numbers, and then we go alphabetically. If I were to click to do descending, I have to click sort again for it to be applied. And then within, you know, Abbott Laboratories here, you can see that the last name is going in alphabetical order as well. I'm sorry, somebody said, is that an error? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Oh, and thank you. Yeah, show change row is very cool. Sorry, I like reading the little comments I get from people. All right, so limit record sort orders, you know, standard stuff was just working in a grid like this. Selection sets, you know, we can all do color coding in Excel, and this is sort of along those same lines. So these are going to have another appearance when we talk about our filters and scoring, but you can use them manually. So if I'm like, all right, Abbott Laboratories, Abbott Labs, those are fine, and I'm going to right-click, add them to the selection set, and we'll get those to be cyan. Now these, Abbott Nutrition, I need to differentiate, and we're going to put those into the violet set. And then this one here that's just Abbott, we're going to get that one orange. So now over here, what I can do is say, just show me the cyan stuff. So if I click show checked, it's only going to show the one that's checked off. Or I can say, show everything that's unchecked, so everything but the one that I have checked. And then of course, show all records. The clear checked will take away, watch the color coding go away. Okay, and clear all will remove the color coding from everything. So it's another way of organizing and denoting your data so that maybe later on you need to make a change to that particular set, and you can find it easily. All right. The right-click setting. So we talked about right-clicking being a big deal. We also have some extra right-click settings that you can add. So if you're not seeing those when you right-click, you have to come here and just check these off. And if you're familiar with mass impact, these may look familiar to you also. These are the formulas that we have. You'll see them in mass impact, mass effect, and they're the formulas that sort of just do what they do. There's not a whole lot of interaction that you're going to have with them to make specifications on how they function. They are set a certain way, and it's just a matter of applying them to a field. So for instance, if I wanted, well, let's say I got a list, right? And if we loaded it in and everything was in all uppercase, and you're like, marketing's going to have a field day with this because they don't want to send things out that show everything in uppercase. You can right-click, and you see these here now because they're selected on the left, and you can say, let's go ahead and proper case this stuff. All right, obviously it was all proper case. Let's do this. We'll do it in all uppercase. So you can do upper, proper, lower. And again, these are things that you can do in Mass Impact too, but they're accessible here in case you see some things that need to be taken care of. You can also format your street addresses. Normalize, and this is for US addresses, but it's going to put them into the format most preferred by the USPS. All right, so South goes to S, Parkway goes to PKWY, And this probably won't show up here very well, but we have a zip code clean. Really great for using on the New England states in the U.S. that have their zip codes that start with the leading 0. A lot of times those things get removed on imports and updates, and so this ensures that if the zip code is less than 5 or 9, well, 5 digits for sure, it's going to put that leading 0 back on. And I don't think we'll have anything like that here because we're not querying any New England states. You can do country standardizations in the 2-character, 3-character, or the long form. Okay. You can do a North American phone fix, which again formats it to the preferred North American phone format, which is the 3 numbers surrounded by a parentheses, space, 3 numbers, hyphen, 4 numbers. Okay. If there is an extension denoted, it takes it from maybe EXT to an X. All right, so there's a lot of different formulas there, and they're just helpful for data maintenance, management, stuff like that. And keep in mind that while PowerGrid isn't able to be scheduled, your standardization of your data can be scheduled through Mass Impact. So you don't ever have to go in and worry about doing this stuff. You can have the system do it for you. We do have a free scheduler called Job Builder. So if you are interested in scheduling jobs or just taking a little bit of work away from yourself that the system can probably handle on its own, I would definitely recommend looking into that. All right, where are we on time? All right, we got to plug along here. We got about 15 minutes left. The last thing we're going to talk about is filters and scoring. So filters and scoring also employ the use of selection sets. And what it does is you create a filter and says, the records that fit these criteria, let's color code them with this selection set. And then you can utilize this selection set to parse it down to only see that data. The filters in here can behave in 2 different ways, and it's really up to you. You work with them how you want to work with them. But just so you know what your options are, we are going to add a filter, and we're going to call this my Ohio filter. Of course, I've already done that. All right, fine. Let's call this my Arizona filter. Okay. Now, of course, I'm only working with leads at the moment. We know that. But when you add a filter, it's going to ask you which object. And you're probably thinking, isn't it smart enough to know I'm working with leads? It is. However, what we're doing is we're opening up the option for you to have your filters be theme-based instead of object-based. So in essence, you can create one filter that will work for multiple objects. And the reason we do it theme-based is because you're like, I don't need to have, a lead filter that just looks for Arizona leads, and then a contact filter that just looks for Arizona contacts. I can incorporate all 3 of them into here, and the system will be smart enough to know that if there's an account piece here, it's just not going to work with it while we're looking at the leads. So I'll say that the account billing state equals AZ or Arizona. Okay, and then I add another one, and we'll do this for a contact. And we'll do mailing state equals, same thing, AZ or Arizona. Of course, Arizona spelled correctly would be better. And now I'm finally going to get down to my leads. And you don't have to do it this way, okay? They can be object-based, but this is different than any of the other filter options that we have, so I just want you to be aware of the flexibility that exists here. All right, now how does the scoring all come into play? Of course, when we apply this filter to my data set I have here, it will only look at this line item for leads. It's going to ignore these 2. Down here, it says the cumulative score because it will add these together if there were multiple conditions for one object. And it's asking you if the cumulative score is greater than what number do you want it to actually apply to the data. So if I say cumulative score greater than 0, which 1 is greater than 0, anything that equals AZ or Arizona will get a score of 1, which is fine. So greater than 0 works here. So, and we're going to come back in and I'll show you how to work with this a little bit differently. But let's apply this filter. All right, so I click OK, my filter's saved. Over here on the left, I'm going to choose my filter, my Arizona filter, and the selection set that I want it to highlight things. And then I say apply to selection set. So now I come up here and say, all right, just show me my violet. I can see the score. So these all scored 1, and if we look over, we know why, because the state is AZ or Arizona. And because it had a cumulative score greater than 0, it was given the color coding and it fit the filter. Okay. Let's look at a different filter. Okay. This one is saying that the state equals Ohio and the city equals Cleveland. I want both of these to be true, not just one or the other. So I'm saying that my cumulative score has to be greater than 1. Because if I said greater than 0, it's going to highlight stuff where the lead state equals Ohio regardless of the city, and it'll highlight things where lead city equals Cleveland regardless of the state. I don't want that. I want to see where both evaluate to true. So that's when my cumulative score has to be greater than a certain number to fit that. So since the cumulative is 2, it has to be greater than 1. And we'll do that for the orange set, and I'll apply. And so these are filtered out because I applied, to the entire set, not just a subset of the data. So these no longer fit that particular filter, so they weren't scored here, but it kept its color coding from the last filter. Okay, so that's why you're seeing the score change. And we're just going to show the orange. Oops, did I do that wrong? My filter too. Okay, that's right. Oh, but I chose violet again. That's why. I should have chose a different color. Something went amiss here. Hang on a minute. Let me clear this stuff. Clear all. Clear and hide scores. All right, so apply the selection set. Okay, so you have this one as 1 because it's in Ohio, but the city isn't Cleveland. And if we look, this is Cleveland, but it says OH, and I believe my filter said specifically OHIO. Okay, so that's why this one isn't showing up. So we'll just show the check, and there wasn't any, that's why, there wasn't any that fit that. So let's change this. Let's make this, instead of just Ohio, we'll add OH. And now, apply it again. So this guy here showed up, okay? It's because he has a cumulative score of 2, which is obviously greater than 1. And now, you can see what fits. And there's my orange one. So I applied the Arizona, I made it orange. So you can see that the filters are showing orange because it fit this filter, and then violet, and I'll show both of those because it fit the other filter. So the color that you choose is dynamic. It's not saved as part of the filter. You can change that as you go. Filters tend to be confusing, maybe because of how I explain them. If you have questions about that, please let me know. Or if you need me to, re-explain something, let me know. I don't want you guys to walk away from here confused or unsure about something, because we still definitely have time to accommodate some more questions. Right, but those are the primary and really all the nitty-gritty details of PowerGrid. It's a way for you to manipulate your data in a nice grid environment without the onus of import and export. And a lot of times we do need to look at our data this way. We can't always say, let's query this subset of data and make this change. Sometimes we have junk in our data that we just have to go through and get rid of, like people putting stuff like this in the name. You know, like, what is that? So you just got to come in here. You can't query for that, and you just got to get rid of it. You know, somebody was like, I've got a whole bunch of stuff in my last name field, and I don't even know. I said, you know what? You're going to have to look at it. So go through in PowerGrid and just sit down, get comfortable, and go through and make your changes. I don't see any other questions coming through, but like I said, we still have some time. So if there's anything I can answer for you or something you want me to recover, or maybe you're thinking, you know, is this scenario possible in here, you can always ask me that too. But if not, if you guys are getting ready to jump off and you want to go, I do want to say thank you for taking the time out of your morning and joining me. We love giving our free training sessions. We want our users to be as informed as possible. And we also want your feedback. So if you have feedback for me about the training or about the module, let us know. You're going to get a survey request after our training. This is something new that we're doing. So yes, I'm sort of, you know, encouraging you guys to do it. And to be honest, I want to know where we can do better, but if you think it was great, tell us that too. When it comes to the product and any feature requests or ideas you might have at the moment, I'm just going to ask you to email that stuff to me. But again, we're coming out with some new stuff to make those sorts of communications easier, and so you can also view the other ideas that are out there. So that's the only teaser I can give you about that. But if you have the time, I really would appreciate you filling out the survey. And I know we're all tough on time, so if you don't, no hard feelings, but if you see it come through today, tomorrow, you know, give it a shot. All right, so another question is coming in. Does this or any other demand tools allow for a similar functionality to Excel VLOOKUP? Oh, yes. So VLOOKUP I love, but I hate all at the same time. I would direct you to find IDs because that allows you to take a spreadsheet of data and compare it to whatever table you want in Salesforce. So let's say you're like, I want to do a comparison of these two sets of data. You can just export one of those sets and then query and compare to the other set and find IDs. And you do the comparison all custom, kind of like a single table dedupe. So that one's really slick. If you want a training for that, like I said, just log that request and I'll send you a recorded one. But that's where I would go. Let's see, is there a field limit to show in the grid? Not that we have hit, but frankly, if you're pulling in that many fields, I'm not sure if this would be the greatest place for you to do it. But no, I don't see a field limit. My guess is maybe 255 like any other grid, but let's see if we can't max it out here. Let's get more fields. I wish we had a check all, but maybe that's why we don't. You know, and just the more data you bring down, the more it's going to stress your computer resources. So if you can use the 64-bit, go for it. If not, no big deal. And also just pulling down some of this stuff is up to the API and how quickly. So I don't know how many fields I have here, but I've got a lot. So not that we've hit just yet. Sorry, I can't be more specific. Oh, no, that's okay. If you want a training session, here, let me show you. You can either come here on the home page and go to tech support and log a case, or you can always go to our website and you'll find the same thing under support and then open a technical case. And sooner or later, guys, you're not going to have to request these. We're going to get them out there so you can just grab them at will. We're making a lot of fun changes over here, so we're excited about it. You're very welcome. All right, anything else I can answer for you guys? I love the questions that you've been asking today. It's always a good time when we get interactive users because it's helpful for everybody else. I mean, yeah, fine, you can listen to me give you the details, but when other people start asking questions, sometimes it spurs a question in your mind, so I appreciate it. All right, I don't see anything else coming in, so I'm going to give you back 5 minutes of your, oh, I spoke too soon. How do we know when new features, functions are added and available? We will let you know. We always send out an email, and we're going to put something here on this homepage. So if there's something new coming out, or, well, not coming, but when it is out, we will be sure to blast you with it. Now, of course, if you have requested to not be part of an email list of ours, you won't get the email, which is why we try to put a little notification here as well. And of course, on our website, we'll have some stuff. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. You guys have a great rest of the week. If you have any questions, be sure to give us a holler and let us know. And hopefully we'll see you on some future training sessions. Thanks, guys. I'm going to end now. Bye-bye.